after a while, I mean, the buzz just wasn't that much fun anymore.
Right.
You know?
So you felt guilty because of the messages you heard in the church, or or the lifestyle of these other Christians impacted you?
Yeah, it was, well, between the woman who is now, by the grace of God, became my wife and has helped me hugely in all of this. I had, friends who were pastors, and I had, friends that were elders in the church, and we sit down and we talk, and it was all just a big, big story then,
Right.
Tell them one thing, go home and do another, but then, like I said, after a while, it just, the more I started to do things in the church, the less fun everything else became, and I really started to take the God thing,
Right.
As I used to call it. I started taking it serious. I was like, well, maybe there's something to it,
Right.
And so then I started reading more, and it was, let's see, my wife and I were together. We were together for like 3 years, and one afternoon I just looked at it. I said, you know what? I don't want to do this anymore.
Yes.
I said, this is nuts.
Right. Now, when you read the Bible, we read in the book of Acts about Paul, book of Acts chapter 9, about Paul going to Damascus to persecute the Christians that were meeting in Damascus.
Mm-hmm.
And Scripture says Jesus appeared to Paul on the way to Damascus. And at that point in time, Paul decided to give up, surrender his life. If you were to meet Paul and say, hey, Paul, when did you know this Jesus? When did you first surrender to this Jesus? Paul will say, that day on the way to Damascus, I met Jesus and I gave my life to Christ. Can you precisely give us the encounter, the experience, what happened that you turned your life to Christ?
Oh, yeah. My wife had gone with some members of the church over to the, I think it was the Manchester Christian Church, to see Heaven's Gates and Hell's Flames. And so they wanted me to go, and I was, nah, it's okay, go ahead and go check it out. I'm going to hang out. I'll hang out with the guys here at the church for a while, and then, I'll see you when you get back. Well, she wasn't in the car maybe a minute, and they were on their way up the hill, and I jumped in my car, and I took off, and I went home.
Yes.
And,
from the church, right?
From the church, yeah.
Did they know you left the church and went home?
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
I said, I'll see you guys later.
Why did you leave? Was it boring, or what was the issue?
No, I wanted to go get stoned. I wanted to go get high. I figured I had I figured I had a good 2.5 hours before, she was going to be home. So,
right.
What she don't know won't hurt me,
Yes.
So I ended up, I went back to the house, and I packed the bowl, and I snuck out on the porch. And I got buzzed, and I came back in, and I was sitting there on the chair, and the TV was like right in front. And I said, well, I got time to kill. I'll flip on the TV and see what's on.
Right.
So I turned it on, and there was nothing, And so we had a bunch of movies. And so I figured, well, all right, just watch a movie. I'm sitting now. I'm still timing all of this, mind you.
Right.
And so, well, I got about an hour and a half, 2 hours. I'm all set. So I'm looking through the movies, and what's sitting there on the shelf but Heaven's Gates and Hell's Flames. And I kept going back to that,
And going back to the same movie.
Yeah, it was like, it was like somebody sitting there taking my head, going, look at that,
right.
Look at, And I'm like, look, I don't want to watch that, okay? And I'm looking, and I was sitting there talking to myself, and I'm sitting there thinking, I must be losing it. Why am I sitting here doing this? Well, anyways, I'm sitting there, and I kept looking back. I said, you know what? I have no idea who the heck I was talking to, but I said, all right, look, you want me to watch? I'll watch the movie. If that'll make you happy, fine, And
you don't know who you were talking to.
I had not a clue. I mean, I was the only one in the room, and here
Right.
I am sitting there talking to me, But I put the movie in, and within the first 2 minutes, 3 minutes, I mean, there was a guy coming down the aisle with a cross on his back, and he was getting beat on.
That was in the movie.
That was in the beginning of the movie.
The beginning of the movie, right.
Yeah, and if anybody really wants that first encounter to see what it was all about, they ought to see that. But I'm sitting there, and my first reaction was anger.
Yes.
You know, because here's this little guy, you know, pretty much. And I was like, my first thought in my mind was, why don't you guys try that with me? You know, I wish I could climb into the TV and, you know, try pushing me around like that, see what happens. And I'm sitting there and I'm looking, all of a sudden I had this voice in my ear going, what are you talking about? That's you. And I was like, what do you mean that's me? I said, yeah,
Yes.
you're one of the ones that's sitting there kicking them and spitting them and dragging them and beating on them. And I was like, nah, no. And it just kept gnawing at me, you know?
Right.
And then finally I was like, oh, Lord, you know, what am I doing?
Right.
You know, that's not, and I hit the floor. I mean, I was on my knees, I was bawling like a baby, and the buzz was gone.
And the movie kept going on.
The movie kept going on.
You went slaying on the floor.
Oh, I was kneeling on the floor,
Instead of weeping.
Weeping wasn't it, man. I mean, I was crying a river as big as I am, you know, and it was unbelievable. And the more I looked, and I just started babbling, you know, and I was like, God, you know, am I really that bad? You know, and I got this major conviction, and I was like, oh man, I'm a creep. You know, and I called myself a couple of more expletives that I'm not going to mention.
Yeah.
But by the time I got done, man, I mean, I was just like, God, you got to do something here, man.
Yeah.
You know,
So what happened when your wife, they all came back from the church?
Oh, I still played it cool. I was still played it cool, man. I was like, I had my confrontation, my time with God.
Yeah.
And I said, Lord, I said, you know, you gotta change me, man. I mean, I can't do this anymore. I don't want to do this anymore. I mean, if that's what I'm doing to somebody I don't know, what am I doing to the people I do know?
Right.
You know, what kind of a person am I? You know, and it was like the Lord, you know, just put His hand on my shoulder and said, man, he said, don't worry about it. I got you.
Right. Now, let's go back to the time that you were living in drugs and compare the time. The time that you were under the influence, living this life of drugs. When you now had a turnaround and turned your life to God, began walking with God, did it ever occur to you, say, wow, what if I had died when I was living this lifestyle?
I had a point in time when my wife and I were sitting on the porch downstairs, and I had gotten to that point where I really wanted to be saved.
Yeah.
I really wanted to have this relationship with God, but there was so many questions. And so we were sitting on the steps in the front of our house, and I lost it. I was like, God, what am I doing? What is my purpose here? Are we playing games? You know, if there's something you want me to do, you need to tell me what I need to do, man. 'Cause I don't know.
Right.
You know, and that was pretty much the turning point, because I started getting more involved with the church shortly after that. And I was, you know, because my biggest, what am I still living for?
Right.
What am I here for? What's my purpose?
Right.
You know, I'm not doing anybody any good. I'm certainly not doing myself any good. And that's when the Lord started showing me exactly what I was here for. You know, why I was here, what I needed to do, the changes I needed to make, why I needed to make them, and it's been, you know, it's been an adventure, man. I'll tell you. You know,
Yeah.
God has put me in situations that I never thought I'd have been in, that I really never wanted to be in. But I'm glad He put me there, because not only did I be able to show somebody else what was going on, but I learned a lot in the process.
Right. You're watching Live Today with Chris Arno. We are going to take a short break, and when we are back, Charles is going to tell us how his life has changed since he turned his life to Christ, and what he is doing, and how you out there who is living in this life of drugs can be helped. Don't go away. We'll be right back.